Imagine waking up one day in your 40s and realizing a path you have been for years just isn't right anymore. Are you stuck with the notion of fixed future? What would you do? Would you push through or do you dare to pivot? Ever feel like your path is already set in stone and you are just along for the ride? What if I told you that embracing uncertainty, instead of fearing it, could actually unlock a deeper sense of purpose and fulfillment? We cannot figure out what we really want in our 40s if we don't first give ourselves permission to change our mind. About our career, our marriage, our lifestyle, our past, our dreams, even the things we once shouted from the rooftop so everyone can hear. It seems what we wanted at 25 is not what we want now. And that doesn't make us inconsistent. It makes us alive, evolving, and growing. In the last episode, we talked about reclaiming our voice. The power of finally saying out loud what we want after years of silence, confusion, or compromise. But here is the thing. Once we start voicing our vision, something unexpected often happens. We realize some of those visions no longer feel true. And that's exactly where this episode begins. Because it takes just as much courage to change your mind as it does to speak it in the first place. Giving yourself permission to update your desires, to let go of old dreams, and to walk away from roles or goals that no longer fit. This is the next level of claiming your life. Your voice opened the door, now your evolution walks through it. So, what do I want in my 40s? And if that answer is going to be real, not performative, not respectable, not what our boss or therapist or our mom wants to hear, then we need to start with this simple truth. We are allowed to change our mind. There is a constant pressure in life to stay the same. The pressure comes from inside the house and also from the neighbors. Before we can give ourselves permission to change our mind, we have to confront two massive roadblocks. The first one is the resistance inside our own head. And the second one is the resistance from people around us. Let's start with the first one. Internal resistance is the voice in our head that won't let us pivot. This is the quiet but persistent voice that says, you cannot change your mind now. You have already committed. You are being dramatic. You're just bored. Other people would kill for what you have. How dare you not want it? This resistance is subtle and slippery. It wears the costume of logic, responsibility, or even gratitude. It says, don't be ungrateful, or just wait a little longer, or maybe it is you. But underneath it all is one simple fear. If I admit this isn't right for me anymore, I will lose control. I will lose certainty. I will lose who I thought I was. And that is terrifying. Often, when we change our minds, we are not jumping joyfully toward a new crystal clear vision. We are just quietly backing away from something that no longer feels right, and that in between space where we don't know yet what we want, but we do know what we don't, can feel terrifying. But clarity doesn't always come first. Sometimes it's the reward for being brave enough to leave what's misaligned. The fear we feel isn't a sign that we are lost. it is a natural companion of growth. So instead of demanding answers, start building tolerance for uncertainty. We should let ourselves sit in the no longer zone without forcing ourselves to the not yet space. Take small steps, experiment. Try new ideas on, like outfits, without committing to any of them just yet. Change doesn't always start with a plan. Sometimes it starts with a boundary. I'm done with this, and that is more than enough to move forward. Let's talk about the mental block that keeps most of us stuck. We feel guilty for evolving. We think that because we invested 10 years in something, we owe it more of our time. We think because we made a choice publicly, we have to defend it forever. Changing our mind isn't giving up. It is graduating. The desire to want something different is a signal that we have outgrown something, not failed at it. Real life revisions happen all the time. The woman who spent 15 years chasing tenure and then left to open a plant shop because she was done with publishing papers no one read, or the woman who realized that being everything for everyone was a title she didn't apply for, and she is resigning now. The professional who wanted to move to the mountains and knit for a living. These are not cautionary tales. They are roadmaps. There is also an external resistance to changing our minds. This is layer 2. This one is trickier. Even if you come to terms with your desire for change, the people around you may not. Why? Because your change has implications and can have a rippling effect on them. Your decision to pivot might shake the foundation they are standing on. If you quit your job, who handles the mortgage? If you leave the relationship, what happens to the family dynamic? If you start saying no, who has to step up? If you admit you no longer believe in something, who has to re-examine their beliefs too? Sometimes other people resist your change, not because they don't love you, but because they benefit from the version of you that stayed the same. They are invested in your consistency. And the bigger the impact your change has on their world, the louder their resistance will be. They might call you selfish, confused, unstable. They might even guilt you or panic or try to reason you back into the box you just started crawling out of. But their discomfort, that's not your responsibility. Resistance, both internal and external, isn't a sign that changing your mind is wrong. It is a sign that changing your mind matters. Push through it, gently or boldly. But don't confuse other people's fear with your failure. And don't confuse doubt with a dead end. This is just the first gate, and you have the key. Today's conversation is a strategic clarity session. We have done the identity work over the past few episodes. We have peeled the layers, questioned the masks, looked at our careers, our body image, our roles. Now comes the pivot. What do I actually want now? Not 5 years ago, not what makes sense, just now, today. And if the answer requires walking away from something you once believed in, just do it. No apology necessary. Every time someone changes their mind and owns it, they clear the fog for someone else. How to recognize it's time to change your mind about something? The first step, notice the resentment. It's often the first clue. If you're constantly irritated, depleted, or fantasizing about escape plans, something is off. Then ask better questions. Not what should I do? Try what would feel more like me now. And name your fear. Is it the fear of judgment that is paralyzing you? The fear of failure? Disappointing others? Call it out. It loses its power when it has a name. And communicate with compassion and conviction. How we could voice the shift without over-explaining ourselves. We can just say, I've changed. It is a complete sentence. But if they need more, try, I'm learning more about myself and I want to live in alignment with who I am now. Or say, that used to work for me, it doesn't anymore. Or I have grown, and my desires too. Maybe I'm not who I was, and I'm not supposed to be. And honestly, expect resistance from others and from yourself. That is normal. You're not just changing your mind, you're changing the whole narrative. If someone doesn't get it, that's their homework, not yours. Here is where it all comes together. The more you get to know who you are now, the more your wants will evolve. That is not the last time you will change your mind. It shouldn't be. Because wanting differently, loving differently, choosing differently is the evidence that you are paying attention to yourself. And honestly, that is the whole point of this decade. Ask yourself today, what's one thing you thought you wanted but no longer do? Now say it out loud to yourself or someone else, or write it here in the comments. That single sentence might unlock the door to everything that does fit. So that is it. If we want to figure out what we want in our 40s, we should permit ourselves to change our mind. This is not a breakdown, not a crisis, not a betrayal of our past self. Just a courageous update from the woman we have become. I think we should call it version 4.0, patched, evolved, and way more aligned with our true self. Let's compare our personal evolution through decades to phones. We have gone from simple phone booths to smart devices that track our sleep, give us unsolicited advice, and eavesdrop on our therapy session. Thanks, AI. Same with us. Version 4.0 looks polished. Boundaries, breath work, green smoothies. But under the hood, it's way more complicated. We are constantly rewriting code, debugging our past, managing expectations, and juggling updates in real time. The tech got smarter, and so did we. But smarter doesn't mean simpler. It means layers. And this isn't the final version. I believe there is gonna be a 5.0, 6.0, maybe even a 9.3 beta waiting. Because evolving isn't optional. It is built into our system. So now that you have given yourself permission to change your mind, what comes next? Boundaries. Because once you start redefining what you want, you are going to have to protect it. And that means saying no. Sometimes to opportunities, often to expectations, and occasionally to the people you love. In the next episode, we are diving into the art of saying no. How to set boundaries without burning bridges. How to recognize burnout before it becomes your baseline. And most importantly, how to build the courage to disappoint others in order to stay true to yourself. Because saying no isn't selfish, it is sacred. See you all then.